Up until now, we have been using two different words to describe what you are actually finding through a Coveo interface. Items, which is what we see in the result list, and document, which is what you will see if you click on an item title, for example. What you need to understand is that an item is an abstraction of a document. This is a very important concept to understand because it unlocks a lot of possibility on how you can use an interface to find what you're looking for. But what do we mean by abstraction? Put simply, an abstraction is a process of hiding all but relevant data about an object in order to reduce complexity and increase efficiency. For example, let's say we have this document, a web page that is part of the Coveo product documentation. How could we express it in a simpler form? Well, let's see. Well, first we have the actual text contained inside the document. The one that starts with Coveo for Dynamic enables you to. In a sense, we can say that this is the actual content of the document. See here that we are ignoring the navigation bar on the left and on the right. This is because, well, that is repeated across all documents on that particular site. In other words, these navigation bars do not define that specific document. The text, however, does. Great. Now, is there additional information we could use to describe this page? What could we use to create an abstraction that would be a faithful representation of that document? Of course there is. The first one that we could think of is the page URL, or its address. This is pretty unique and thus very useful to describe this document. Okay, what else? Well, we could say that this page is about a specific Coveo product. In this case, Coveo for Dynamics. Also, this page was created by the Coveo doc team. This is also very useful to describe it. We could also say that the date at which this document was updated is very relevant to describe it. And of course, we could continue on finding new ways to characterize this document, like target audience, doc types, etc. All of these elements, the URL, the author, the updated date, the audience, etc., all have something in common. They all represent information about the document. And this is called metadata. Notice the difference here. Content represents what is contained inside the document. Metadata, on the other hand, gives us information about the document itself and its content, like the author. Now, there's one more piece of information missing to fully describe a document. It's not obvious at first. It's the notion of who can actually see this document. In other words, the permission around who can access this document and what can they do to it. In this case, it's simple. It's a public document, so anyone can access it. But it might not be the case for all documents. Think about it. Is there documents in your environment or organization that cannot be accessed by everyone? Think about employee records, payroll, or sensitive client information. There has to be very strict restriction about these specific documents. And this is why the Coveo platform is designed to never show you items that you don't have the right to see. With these three information, content, metadata, and permission, it is possible to create an abstraction of any types of document. A Word document, a database entry, a Salesforce account, anything. In the Coveo platform, we call this abstraction an item. The notion of an item is one of the most fundamental ideas behind the Coveo platform. A little bit later, we'll see how we can leverage this as end user to help us refine our research. But before we do, we must introduce one more fundamental concept: fields. Put simply, a field is how information is stored inside an item. It's a container. By design, a field can only contain information about an item, metadata, or its content. Indeed, permissions are never stored inside field for security reasons. Okay, now you might be wondering, what does this has anything to do with me, an end user? In short, it's because a Coveo interface allows you to refine your research to only items whose content contains specific keywords and item with specific field name and values. That might sound a little bit complicated for now. Don't worry, we'll see how we can do that in the next video. What you must understand for now is that all fields have what's called a name or a field name. It can be useful to visualize it as the name of the container that contains the information. Here, URL, product, author, updated date, audience, text, and titles are all field names. Likewise, all field names have a corresponding field value. For example, the value of the field product is Coveo for Dynamics. So this can be viewed as what is inside the container. So to return on what we just saw, you could use a Coveo interface to see only items that were created by a specific author for a specific product line, which contain specific keywords. All you would need to do that would be the name of the field that contained the information. We'll see how we can do that in the next video. And for now, there's one last thing to see before we can do that. So, a field is a container for an item content or metadata. That being said, there's in fact two broad types of fields. It's important to understand the distinction because it affects you directly as end users. Regular fields are the container for an item metadata. In other words, the metadata of an item represent all the field name and value declared as a regular field by the designer of your Coveo deployment. That being said, there is another type of field, free text field. All the free text field on an item represent that item content. In short, all regular fields correspond to an item metadata, and meanwhile, all the free text fields correspond to an item content. This is super important to understand because this has a direct impact on how you can research for information using a Coveo interface. In the next video, we'll see why.